A lot of the fans might not have noticed a difference with the on-track racing, but you'll be able to notice a difference with my set. This is the Weekend Debrief. And welcome to the Weekend Debrief. I'm your host, James, and today we're going to talk about Las Vegas. And we're going to break the show down a little bit differently. We're going to start with the Cup race, then we're going to break down the Xfinity and truck race. Get it? Got it? Good. So the Cup race was one of the most overhyped races in the history of NASCAR. I would want to compare it to when NASCAR was first launching the COT back in 2007, the Bristol race, the Food City 500. That race was so anticipated, and both these races I draw the comparison because there were no two races where there was more anticipation really just being held on the car itself and its performance rather than the driver, the track, or any other element or factor. But winter testing this year, it really drew up a lot of the hype because the testing was at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, the track that, was going to see the first race with the official, aero package. Last week was a tease with aero ducts not being included in Atlanta, and now there's aero ducts in Vegas. And now it's going to bring this whole new style of racing and this pack racing. And yeah, I even said it was going to probably be like the test because it was going to be like the test. And how long were the test sessions? 10, 15 laps? How long were the side-by-side racing last for? 10 to 15 laps. It just kind of is what it is right now. So here's what I got to say for a lot of people. Don't believe the hype. There's a lot of hype around this, and it's not just from NASCAR. The broadcasters, Fox and NBC, have been pushing a lot of hype about this. Content creators such as myself have been pushing a lot of hype about this. And our own imaginations have been creating a lot of hype around this. And a lot of, speculation, because we're just here and we're chilling and we're living in an age where we can converse more with others. So yeah, it was definitely an overhyped race. And I'm not going to discredit people and just say, hey, it was overhyped, you should have saw this coming. I want to know what you want to see. It's easy to say, yes, the package is garbage, it's this, it's bad, but let's be constructive. What would you like to see from the package? What is it? And let's go through it still. Here was the hype of the Pennzoil 400, the drafting in the packs, and more or less the packs of like 2001 restrictor plate racing. That was never going to happen, everyone. I know it was nice to think that everyone was going to form like a train on the top line and it was going to be like this really close like slot car racing thing, but it wasn't. There was a lot of, finesse because there were a lot of cars that were quick and had short run speed, like the RCR cars. They were pretty fast in qualifying and they were up there at the top of the charts, but when it came down to race, they weren't. They were out to lunch, unfortunately, and it's a shame. And that's to go with a lot of the Chevy organizations as well. The close side-by-side racing, yes, we saw that on restarts, for those stage restarts, especially on that last stage restart. It had my eyes glued to the television. I was just blown away by it. It was pretty great. And there were some moments, too, when we saw the leaders kind of just dicing it up amongst themselves with lap traffic. It was really great to see that. But I feel like people wanted to see the top 10 dicing it up and to see like a close competitive pack of cars really racing side by side together. And not necessarily like a pack, like a restrictor plate pack, but like, hey, it's the top 10 and they're within a second of each other. Lead changes would happen, and so often. NASCAR, NBC, Fox, you all hyped this up too much this week. Everyone, they didn't really overhype it. Like, they just talked about it more than I think any other track would. Like, it's Las Vegas. And unfortunately, when you hype it up like that and the actual result of lead changes is less than the median average, it's a little concerning, but it is what it is. Yeah, there weren't too many cautions because that side-by-side racing didn't lead to those close quarter contact moments that sent a car on the wall. It didn't. It was a clean race, and that I apologize for all the fans. And Tony Stewart apologizes too.
If we don't crash half of the field by the end of the race, they really need to extend it, because I mean that's what the fans want.
This will definitely be a package that will continue to evolve and get better, and we'll see it get better at different tracks. Like the best of the best racing will be at Michigan, will be at California, and Kansas. You know, the really wider, 2 mile, half mile and a half tracks. That's where you'll see it more. Chicagoland as well. Yeah, I know it's slower. That's a big aspect. But didn't we talk last week about how speed is irrelevant? So, yeah. Don't believe the hype. Moving on. Let's think about the positives from this race. So, one thing that was introduced, it was aeroducts, and I want to believe aeroducts are a good thing. We saw that drivers were able to really race one another, be able to move around in the turns, change up their lines when they needed to, because a lot of the driving was really based off of what car in front of you was going to do going into the corner, especially slower lap traffic, because you wanted to have a line that wasn't compromised by lap traffic, so you could just continue on by. That was a good aspect to see that the aeroducts are probably doing that. And I hope with the Gen 7, it allows for more design aspects and features, and maybe introduces different aeroducts that incorporate into the body. I know it's still a splitter, but we can't bring the valence back. I'm sorry, and Mike Helton knows that. Thank you, Mike Helton. There was a draft, okay? I know it wasn't a restrictor plate draft, but when you got off the corners, you could see, the leaders sneaking a draft off of lap cars. You could see drivers in the packs sneaking drafts off of one another, trying to make runs on each other. Speaking about air, when we're talking about air a lot, you could use a lot of the air. You saw drivers understanding what they could do with air, dumping it on, the quarter panels of cars to stall them out when they're underneath of them, seeing how a car gets stalled out when trying to pass another car. We saw this a lot with leaders encountering lap traffic. Kyle Busch taking a 3 wide. There was lanes, and that was great to see because drivers could move around. Like we mentioned before, there was a lot of lap traffic, and you had to choose your line. And to get around people, choosing your line was also important. Strategy was important. It's always important every week, but I don't think people understand that part of strategy is track position, and track position was really important with this package. I mean, we saw Kurt Busch. He got out there with 16 lap older tires, but was able to stay out front because he had good track position, he had good air on his car. Plus the fall off on the tires wasn't extremely bad. I felt like I think that's something that we should look at too, is his tires cycled. They went through a cycle where they cooled down, and then he went back again, and he still had speed. And it was at a point in the race where no one could really ever try that again, so I guess put that in your notebook for Las Vegas in the fall. Going into tires, tire fall off was really good. You didn't see a lot of bad things with tires. Didn't hear about any issues with cordings or blowouts. And when you lower the speed, you lower the tire wear. It doesn't mean that there's not tire fall off, because that also brought into strategy, because then we saw in the stage aspect of the race when drivers would come in and when they wouldn't, would kind of hamper on what they thought they could get out of their car with, the longevity of the tires. If my car wasn't that great, I'm just going to try to pit now, get the most out of my new tires while everyone else is on old tires. That way, when it cycles out, I'll be ahead of them. And there's a lot of drivers that did that. And you saw drivers and teams like William Byron and Chad Knaus who decided to go with 2 tires at the end of stage 2, trying to get some stage points. But Double J ended up sneaking them. Shout out to NASCAR and Fox for showing that battle with Johnson and Byron for the final stage point in stage 2. That was nice to see. There was Ford dominance. I mean, believe that Ford didn't miss a beat with getting this Mustang up and running. And I feel like with the way they developed the Fusion the last few years, it was kind of focused in the direction of the Mustang, which allowed them to not miss too much of a beat. But the Fords overall were fast. We saw Penske fast, we saw SHR fast, and we saw Roush Fenway fast with Ricky Stenhouse Jr. in the top 10. So it's good to see that. Kurt Busch is carrying the Chevy banner, but I want to believe he is his own man. I mean, that's Kurt Busch right there. I also want to believe races are won on and off pit road because of a lot of factors. Strategy is one thing, but the biggest thing, you can't make mistakes. Penalties came into play, and we saw that cost several teams. Ryan Blaney got hit with speeding penalty. Kyle Busch got hit with a speeding penalty. Kyle Larson and Austin Dillon got hit with infractions of too many men over the wall when, pit crew members basically just kind of fell over the wall, had to catch themselves with their hands over the wall, which is black and white. As long as a part of you hits the other side of that pit wall and on that surface, you're over the wall. That's completely understandable. So it's just the way it is, because a lot of these teams have to practice this tight choreographed, pit stop with only 5 members over the wall. You have to have all these other guys kind of helping out so that, this rule with, a tire not being, out of your reach or distance of you can be achieved, as well as a 13-second pit stop. So, and finally, let's get down to the lower tier series. The Xfinity race. Kyle Busch ended up winning that one. I'm not saying because Kyle Busch won it. I'm just saying because it just ended up with a lot of torn up equipment at the end. Which is sad, because even last fall I thought the Xfinity race at Las Vegas was probably one of the best races of the year. Just really close, competitive side-by-side racing. The package that the Xfinity series has there is really, really good. The drivers use it to their advantage, and you saw really great racing. And the struggles that hampered Kyle early on with those loose lug nuts, that kind of added to the drama of that race, which was interesting as well. I just wish it didn't end up in so much torn equipment, especially for Shane Zeen making his Xfinity Series debut and having such a great run for Junior Motorsports, and had a top 10, just vanished. And RCR lost a car there, and Tyler Reddick does not need to be bringing back cars like that anymore. And he said it in his interview before the race, and unfortunately that happened. But it was a good race. Good to see John Hunter Nemechek get top 2 there. So good for John Hunter on that front. And Ross Chastain used a water bottle as a microphone. Highlight of my Saturday. Truck Series. Truck Series was another Kyle Busch show. He won that race, but it wasn't like a dominating race by Kyle Busch. There was a lot of good leaders and good battles from the Truck Series regulars. Brett Moffitt and Grant Enfinger were strong. In fact, the ThorSport trucks were pretty strong in general, especially Matt Crafton after all that damage from the early incident, getting run in the back by Corey Roper, which was a shame for Corey because he had speed as well. It was a solid race. It does, when Kyle races in these lower series, it does beckon the question, is it beneficial for the drivers there, to have Kyle Busch coming in there and beating them up on their turf? Well, it is what it is, but Brett Moffitt becomes a better driver because of it, and the same with John Hunter Nemechek. And, later on, we'll see them be able to go up against Kyle Busch again in another battle, and maybe they'll win on that front. It just, sometimes they'll win, sometimes they'll lose, and, only time will go on and tell. But this weekend was a solid weekend, especially with the Aero Package's debut. We shouldn't hamper and cry and say, no, we're done with NASCAR, because, if you want to, you can. IndyCar starts next weekend, and I, do recommend tuning into the Grand Prix of St. Pete. I'll be there covering that, so if you see me at the track, tell me what's up. That should be fun. But don't get caught up on it. It is what it is, and this was Las Vegas. Let's go on to the next race and see how it's going to do there. We're on the West Coast swing. There are a lot of great tracks coming up still with this West Coast swing, that this Aero Package and this entire new 2019 race package can, help improve overall racing from last year, just in general. And we shouldn't just immediately compare it to last year. I think we should just compare it overall to, what we expect a quality race. And for a lot of us, we have different expectations of a quality race. So it's all about trying to find that happy median. And unfortunately, we're all not going to be happy. But that's okay, because if you want that 2001 restrictor plate race, it's on YouTube, and we'll all watch together. Like and subscribe. Hit me up on Twitter and Instagram. I always love to engage and talk, especially NASCAR. Until next week, let's keep believing.